Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you with me again in a new episode, continuing the heartwarming yet challenging story of single mother Ly Hoai Ca and the policeman Hùng. In the previous episode, during the bustling days of Tet, Hùng suddenly returned, bringing Hoai Ca and Tony a truly complete and joyful reunion. The image of the three gathered around the holiday feast, strolling under the blooming pink peach blossoms, or laughing together at the fireworks festival still seems to echo vividly in our minds. Those moments warmed the hearts of anyone who witnessed them. Yet, life never stops turning. Just as happiness begins to bloom, unexpected events appear ahead. A surprise awaits Hoai Ca, Hùng, and little Tony, one that could change the future of their small family. It is not only a source of joy but also a test, helping them better understand love, responsibility, and the choices they must make. Will Hoai Ca find the peace she has always longed for? Will Hùng, with the duty of a soldier, have the strength to both fulfill his responsibilities and protect the fragile home he cherishes? And Tony, the innocent little boy, will he continue to live in days filled with love or face unforeseen changes? All will be revealed in today's episode. Stay tuned and watch carefully so you don't miss any important detail. And don't forget to share your feelings after watching, because your encouragement and support are the very strength that keeps me going and telling this story. The holiday days passed in a rare peace that both Hùng and Hoai Ca had long yearned for. Early in the morning, when the sunlight still lingered lightly on the tiled roof, the distant crow of a rooster signaled the start of a new day. In the small kitchen, Hoai Ca busily prepared breakfast. On the wooden table sat just a few simple dishes: a bowl of fresh green Malabar spinach soup, a plate of golden, fragrant fried eggs, and a jar of tangy salted pickles. Yet to them, it was the very flavor of happiness. Tony sat on his little chair, still babbling, not yet able to say much, only uttering a few clear sounds. His tiny hands tapped rhythmically on the edge of his rice bowl, creating funny clinking noises that made Hùng and Hoai Ca burst out laughing. In their eyes, that was the kind of simple joy they had only been able to dream of during the long days apart. After breakfast, Hùng rolled up his sleeves and went with Hoai Ca to the back garden. That place had been tended daily by her, but since she carried the burden alone, there were still many rough patches. Hùng grabbed a hoe, his shirt damp with sweat, working while smiling through narrowed eyes. "Let me handle this. The soil here is tough. You should rest a bit." Hoai Ca stepped closer, gently wiping the sweat from his forehead with a small cloth, and answered softly, "I'm used to it, but with you here, everything feels so much easier." And so, the two of them weeded, turned the soil, and built bamboo trellises for the rows of gourds and squash. Tony toddled around the garden, sometimes squatting to play with the dirt, sometimes bursting out in loud laughter. Hoai Ca handed him a little plastic bucket, calling it his work tool. Tony eagerly scooped water and poured it over the vegetable roots, splashing water everywhere. The scene filled the air with laughter, as if joy itself seeped into every breath they took. By noon, the golden sun shone brightly as Hùng set up a few old mats as a makeshift roof for the young vines. Meanwhile, Hoai Ca sat by the porch, washing a basket of fresh-picked vegetables, the sound of splashing water mingling with birdsong from the mango tree behind the house. In that moment, Hùng paused many times just to gaze at the hard-working woman by the water jars. In his eyes was both love and gratitude, for he knew it was her patience and quiet sacrifices that had kept the flame of their home alive. As evening came, when the garden work was done, they strolled hand in hand across the village fields. The early spring air was cool, the breeze brushing gently over the bright green young rice paddies. Tony skipped ahead, his small legs running tirelessly, his mouth filled with innocent babble. Hùng and Hoai Ca walked slowly behind, sometimes exchanging silent but tender glances, as if wanting to engrave every moment deep into their hearts. When the sun finally dipped, casting golden light across the fields, the three of them seemed separated from all the worries of life, left only as a small family, simple yet whole. Amid life's many upheavals, they had found a place of peace to return to, a home to shelter in, and the belief that as long as they had each other, happiness would never fade. On the afternoon of the second day, the little kitchen glowed with fire, the smell of freshly cooked rice blending with the sharp, smoky aroma that spread throughout the house. Hoai Ca was preparing the meal tray when suddenly her whole body felt faint. A wave of nausea struck her violently, forcing her to clutch the edge of the table. Her legs trembled, and her face turned pale. Hùng, who was chopping firewood in the yard, heard the commotion and rushed inside. Seeing the woman he loved staggering, he dropped the log in panic and hurried to hold her by the shoulders. His voice was urgent, filled with worry. "Hoai Ca, what's wrong? Are you in pain? Let me take you to bed to rest." She forced a faint smile, trying to hide the unease in her heart. "I'm fine. I probably just got tired from going to the market early this morning and cooking too much." But Hùng frowned, suspicion clouding his eyes. He immediately poured a cup of warm water, pressed it into her hands, and spoke gently yet firmly. "Don't push yourself. Whatever it is, you must tell me. Don't make me worry." Holding the cup, Hoai Ca felt a wave of warmth mixed with sorrow rise within her. She knew Hung's concern was genuine, but she didn't have the courage to reveal what was truly making her heart tremble. Night fell. Moonlight poured through the cracks of the bedroom window, scattering pale beams across the floor. Tony was fast asleep, his rosy cheeks pressed against a small pillow, his breath steady and soft. Beside him, Hùng had also drifted into slumber after a day of labor, his quiet breathing echoing evenly. Only Hoai Ca lay awake, staring into the darkness. She could hear the ticking of the wall clock, each beat pressing heavily on her mind. The nausea from earlier returned faintly, accompanied by a slight headache. For a brief moment, a thought blazed through her mind. Could it be? She was pregnant? Her heart raced, pounding as if it would burst from her chest. If it was true, this would be an immense joy, a testament to her love with Hùng, a priceless gift life had bestowed upon them. Yet, alongside the joy came indescribable fear. She remembered Hung's words. In just a few days, he would have to return to his unit, back to his harsh duty. And she alone with Tony, would she have the strength to face the days ahead, especially with another tiny life growing inside her? Hoai Ca gently placed a hand over her stomach, torn between excitement and fear. She asked herself, should I tell him now? Or wait until I'm sure? The uncertainty welled up, her eyes filling with tears that silently spilled onto the pillow. In that moment, Hoai Ca realized that whether in joy or worry, her life had already stepped onto a new path. But the hardest part was not facing the change itself, it was finding the right moment to open her heart to Hùng, the man she trusted most, yet who bore so many responsibilities on his shoulders. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight broke, Hùng took Tony out to the backyard so the little boy could play among the young vegetable rows. Tony chirped like a small bird, toddling around the yard with clear, ringing laughter. Taking advantage of the moment, Hoai Ca quietly changed her clothes and slipped out toward the gate. The familiar path to the morning market suddenly felt longer than usual. From afar, the calls of vendors selling vegetables, fish, and meat mingled with the smoky scent of breakfast stalls. Hoai Ca's steps halted in front of a small pharmacy tucked away near the market road. The wooden door creaked as she pushed it open, her heart trembling with every beat. The shopkeeper, a middle-aged woman, smiled kindly. "What do you need?" Hoai Ca stammered, her eyes starting nervously to the floor. I'd like a pregnancy test." As soon as she spoke, her face flushed hot, her heart pounding like a drum. The woman showed no sign of surprise, quietly wrapped the item in a small paper bag, and handed it to her. Hoai Ca hurriedly slipped it into her pocket, clutching it tightly as if afraid someone might see. On the way home, she walked slower than usual, glancing around with restless unease. All that day, the small paper bag pressed against her chest felt like a weighty secret. From time to time, her hand would brush against it, fingering the package inside with a mix of anticipation and dread. At lunch, Hùng remained unaware, cheerfully recounting Tony's antics in the garden, while Tony babbled happily. Hoai Ca sat silently, forcing a smile though her heart thudded wildly. Again and again she told herself, tonight I will know for sure. Time seemed to crawl. Each moment stretched tight with tension, as if the whole world around her sensed that she was hiding something of great importance. Late at night, the house lay in silence. The steady chirping of insects outside mingled with the soft whisper of wind brushing past the old tiled roof. Hùng and Tony were fast asleep, their even breaths filling the small bedroom. Only Hoai Ca lay awake, her eyes fixed on the dim ceiling, her heart heavy with an unease she could not name. Carefully, she slipped out of bed, gently lifting the blanket so as not to wake Tony. Her steps were as light as the breeze as she moved toward the small bathroom at the end of the hall. The faint yellow light flickered on, illuminating her pale face and eyes glistening with unshed tears. With trembling hands, Hoai Ca pulled out the paper packet she had hidden all day. Nestled in her palm was a pregnancy test, so small, yet holding a secret that could change her life forever. She drew a deep breath, her heart pounding wildly as if it might shatter her chest. The waiting seemed endless, each second stretching into eternity. Hoai Ca stared at the test, lips dry, whispering silent prayers. And then, 2 red lines slowly appeared, undeniable and clear. She froze. Her hands clutched the test so tightly they trembled as if she might drop it. Tears welled up, streaming down her cheeks. A part of her heart burst with joy, for within her, a tiny life was forming, the living proof of the love she and Hùng had carefully nurtured. Yet at the same time, waves of worry gnawed at her. Hùng would soon return to his unit, and she would be left to face the coming trials alone. What should I do? Should I tell him now? If he knows, will it weigh on his mind and distract him from his duty? Or will he torment himself because he cannot stay by our side? Hoai Ca questioned herself, her chest tightening. She sank onto the small chair in the bathroom, pressing the test close against her chest as if cradling a sacred secret. Tears fell endlessly, born both of happiness and of a vague fear for the uncertain days ahead. Outside, moonlight streamed through the window, casting its glow on the figure of a woman clinging to her fragile happiness. Hoai Ca knew her life would never be the same again. For 3 days of the holiday, the little house on the edge of the village was always filled with laughter. Hùng devoted all his time to Hoai Ca and Tony. He didn't mind getting dirty, happily carrying Tony in his arms as he ran circles around the yard, then crouching down patiently to teach the boy how to stack wooden blocks. Tony's innocent laughter blended with Hung's warm, deep voice, echoing through the garden as if the spirit of Tet lingered there, refusing to leave. From the porch, Hoai Ca's hands kept scrubbing dishes, but her eyes never strayed from Hung's every gesture. Watching him hold Tony with such happiness shining in his eyes, her heart swelled with emotions, sweet yet tinged with sadness. Tony was not Hung's biological child. He was the result of a past relationship that had left her deeply scarred. Since the moment Tony first cried out at birth, she had carried the burden alone, never daring to imagine that one day another man would step into her life and offer protection for both mother and child. During those 3 days, every distance between Hùng and Tony seemed to vanish. Tony clung to him, chirping in his childlike way, as though he had already accepted Hùng as dad. Witnessing this, Hoai Ca's heart trembled. The simple happiness she once thought existed only in dreams now unfolded right before her. Yet, because of that, the secret in her heart grew heavier. Each time she tried to speak, her lips pressed tightly shut. She feared that if she revealed it, Hùng would worry, unable to enjoy his rare days of rest. She feared he would be forced to choose between love and duty at his unit, between the longing for a family and the weight of obligations beyond their control. Above all, she feared this fragile happiness would shatter if the burden became too great. In the small bedroom, the old wooden cupboard sat silently. Hidden among piles of faded clothes was a paper box. Inside it, the pregnancy test, marked with 2 bright red lines, a sign of the new life forming within her. It lay there quietly, a sacred yet heavy secret known only to Hoai Ca. At night, Tony slept soundly in Hùng arms, a faint smile curling his lips as if he were dreaming a beautiful dream. Lying beside them, Hoai Ca unconsciously placed her hand on her stomach. Warmth spread through her body, bringing tears to her eyes. Happiness surged, yet was shadowed by worry. When Hùng returned to his unit, could she, a woman who had never worn a wedding dress, who was raising another man's child, and who now carried a new life, find the strength to withstand the trials ahead? Outside, the spring wind whispered through the trees like a murmur of fate. Hoai Ca knew that with just a few words, everything could change. Yet in that moment, she chose silence, quietly bracing herself for a turning point whose direction she could not yet see. The end of the 3-day holiday came faster than Hoai Ca had expected. The peaceful days, filled with laughter, seemed to pass like a fleeting dream. Pale spring sunlight stretched softly over the old tiled roof, while dew still clung to the leaves, sparkling like tiny gems. A rooster's distant crow signaled the start of a new day, yet Hoai Ca's heart felt heavy, wanting to cling to every last moment. Hùng slung his worn backpack over his shoulder, the same one that had accompanied him through many journeys. His steps were firm, but each strike against the brick courtyard rang out like a drumbeat of farewell. He kept a calm smile, masking the reluctance in his heart, unwilling to show weakness before the mother and child. Hoai Ca walked quietly beside him, holding Tony tightly in her arms. The little boy didn't understand, his wide eyes following every movement of his father, his innocent face brimming with curiosity. When Hùng bent down to wave goodbye, Tony babbled a few childish sounds, stretching out his small hands. That sound pierced Hoai Ca's heart like a blade. She tried to stay composed, but her eyes shimmered, her throat tight. The village lane, usually so peaceful, now seemed endless. The spring breeze carried the fragrance of grapefruit blossoms from the backyard, mingling with the creak of bamboo stalks, a farewell melody. Pink bougainvillea petals drifted slowly in the air, as if trying to hold back the man who was leaving. Hùng walked on, then suddenly turned back. His smile was still there, but his eyes were deep with unspoken longing. In them lay both a promise and an unspoken ache. Hoai Ca stopped in place, her hand gripping the hem of her shirt, her heart aching to burst. She longed to run to him, to hold his hand, to tell him everything, that within her was a new life, the fruit of their blossoming love. Yet her lips stayed sealed, her heart torn. She knew he bore great duty to his unit, responsibilities he could not set aside. She feared that if he knew, He would no longer give himself fully to his work, consumed by guilt and distraction. Their happiness felt too fragile, too easily shattered. So she chose silence. In her pocket, the pregnancy test with its 2 red lines still rested, heavy as a sacred secret. Silent, unseen, it was hers alone to guard, like a tiny flame in her heart, enough to warm her, yet also enough to burn her thoughts whenever she pictured the future. Hung's figure grew smaller, then disappeared around the bend of the village road. The space suddenly felt empty, filled only with the rustle of spring winds through bamboo groves and the heavy echo of Hoai Ca's footsteps on her way back home. Tears slid from her eyes, carried by the breeze, chilling her cheeks. She clutched Tony closer to her chest and whispered softly, as though speaking to herself. "My child, we must be strong. For your father, for ourselves, and for the new life waiting ahead." Tony gazed at her in confusion, his tiny hand brushing her cheek as if to soothe her. That innocent gesture made her choke with emotion. She knew that from this moment on, her life had turned onto a new path. It was no longer just the duty of raising Tony, but also of nurturing the fragile life growing inside her. She walked slowly back toward the little house, her shadow stretching long on the sunlit spring road. Each step carried 1,000 emotions: joy, happiness, anxiety, fear, and a fragile hope that one day she would have the courage to tell Hung, the man she loved, but could not yet call her husband. In that silence, Hoai Ca realized happiness had never been easy. It demanded courage, sacrifice, and hidden moments of quiet strength. But she believed that with love and faith, she would be strong enough to protect both Tony and the new life within her, the miraculous gift fate had given. The day Hung left the small village, he immediately returned to the familiar rhythm of work. Car horns echoed through the bustling morning, stacks of files piled high in the duty office, and endless patrol shifts stretched along dusty red roads. Once again, his police uniform clung to his sturdy frame, turning him back into the stern officer, dedicating himself to hardship and duty. Some days, Hung stood in the town square, patiently guiding people to cross the street correctly, explaining the rules, and bending down to help an elderly man who nearly stumbled. Many onlookers watched with quiet admiration. On other days, he and his comrades ventured deep into remote villages, teaching the law, urging people to drink less alcohol and preserve a civilized way of life. These tasks might seem small, but to Hung, they were a profound calling, his chosen lifelong devotion. Though exhausted, he always kept a smile, knowing in his heart that he was doing the right thing for the community. And yet, amid those busy days, the images of Hoai Ca and Tony would suddenly resurface vividly. He remembered the warm family meals under the little roof, Tony's tiny hands clinging hesitantly to his neck, and the gentle but worried gaze of Hoai Ca as she looked at him. That longing he buried deep inside, turning it into motivation to keep moving forward. Meanwhile, back in the little house in the village, Hoai Ca remained lost in her own thoughts. Each morning, she rose early to light the stove, prepared meals for Tony, then took him to the garden to breathe the fresh air. Outwardly, life went on as usual, but inside, her heart was anything but calm. The pregnancy test with its 2 red lines still lay quietly inside the old wooden cabinet. From time to time, she would open it, her trembling hand touching it, as if to reassure herself that it wasn't just a dream. In her eyes flickered both happiness and worry. She longed to tell Hung, yet always held back, afraid of distracting him, afraid that their already difficult life would grow heavier. On quiet nights, when Tony slept soundly, Hoai Ca often sat by the dim oil lamp. The faint yellow glow revealed her weary face, her eyes tinged with sadness. She thought of the future, of responsibility, of the long road ahead. Inside her, one question echoed again and again. Will I be strong enough to keep going, not only as Tony's mother, but also as the bearer of a new life? Outside, the spring wind rustled through the young vegetable garden, carrying the scent of damp earth and the gentle fragrance of grapefruit blossoms. But within Hoai Ca's heart, a silent storm swelled day and night, filled with joy, but also unease, waiting for the day she could confess, waiting for Hung's return, so they could shoulder together this great secret. Will Hoai Ca have the courage to tell Hung the truth she has been keeping hidden in her heart? And if that tiny life truly comes into the world, where will the future of this little family lead? To days of complete happiness, or to yet another trial? Everything still remains a mystery, but one thing is certain. The road ahead will be filled with emotions, with sweetness interwoven with tears. Please leave your blessings and heartfelt thoughts for Hoai Ca, Hung, and little Tony in the comments, because your love and support will be the greatest encouragement for this small family. And don't forget, tomorrow the story will continue with even more unexpected and moving developments. Stay tuned to witness it all.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Ly Hoai Ca và cảnh sát Hùng. Và trong tập hôm nay thì mẹ đơn thân Ly Hoai Ca đã biết là hiện tại mình đang có thai, và liệu cái thai này có phải quả Hùng hay không, và liệu điều gì sẽ xảy ra tiếp theo trong khi cô đang giấu kín cái bí mật về cái thai này đối với Hùng, và liệu hai người sẽ xử lý như thế nào, và đặc biệt là Hoài Ca, cô sẽ xử lý ra sao trong khi cô đang vẫn giấu kín cái giữ kín cái bí mật này đối với Hùng, và liệu rằng chuyện gì sẽ xảy ra tiếp theo thì mời mọi người đón xem vào tập tiếp theo ở trên kênh mình. Thì mình sẽ cố gắng ra video sớm nhất có thể vào ngày mai nha. Và nếu như mà mọi người yêu quý kênh mình cũng như là yêu quý các nhân vật thì hãy để lại bình luận để có thể góp ý kiến cho kênh của mình, cũng như là để ủng hộ tinh thần cho các nhân vật mọi người nhé. Và đừng quên ấn like và đăng ký kênh để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào trên kênh mình nhé.